Hey everyone. Tonight, we're sinking gently into the folds of a forgotten crown. Before she was a name chanted into mirrors or a whisper passed between children at sleepovers, Queen Mary Tudor was a real woman. Lonely, sharp-witted, raised on exile and devotion. The world remembers her for the fires, but rarely for the silence she endured first. So, before you get cozy under that warm blanket, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. But only if what I do here genuinely helps you wind down at night. And hey, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it right now? There's something oddly soothing about knowing there are others awake with us, wandering through history together. Now, dim the lights. Let the room fall still. If you have a candle nearby, light it and watch the flame tremble gently like torchlight in a chapel nave. Or just let the soft glow of your screen cast a quiet gold over the blankets. Close your eyes slowly and let the noise of today loosen its grip. You're stepping into Tudor England. The air smells of beeswax, pressed lavender, and iron. You are standing beneath high-timbered ceilings, draped in the delicate silence of royal privilege. Candlelight flickers across stone walls, chasing shadows into every arch and fold. You are not yet a queen. You are a child, and your name is Mary. It is the year 1516, and you are England's golden girl. Your mother is Catherine of Aragon, daughter of Spain's Catholic majesties, and your father is Henry, tall, vigorous, and adored by the court. You are their only surviving child. A daughter, yes, but a daughter of two dynasties, with fire in your blood and a crown, perhaps, waiting at the end of your cradle. You are intelligent. They say so often enough. Latin comes quickly, and you handle it like a priest. Music flows from your fingers with the elegance of someone twice your age. You read scripture. You debate theology. You are praised by scholars from across Christendom. And for now, that is enough. Henry smiles when you play the virginals for visiting ambassadors. He cups your face in his large ringed hand and calls you his pearl of the realm. You remember his voice when it was warm. Your days pass in the hush of tapestries and ink, prayers whispered over morning bread, embroidery under the watchful eye of your ladies, and the long sun-dappled walks through palace gardens. You know how to curtsy, you know how to kneel, you know how to obey. But you do not yet know how quickly a crown can rust. It begins quietly, like distant thunder too faint to fear, whispers in corridors, a shift in your mother's eyes, servants who pause before speaking. Your father is changing, not with age or illness, but with hunger. He wants a son, and you have not given him one. He wants something else too. A woman who is not your mother. At first, the name Anne Boleyn means nothing to you. A lady in waiting, a face in the distance. But you feel the difference in your father's footsteps. He no longer comes to kiss you goodnight. He no longer visits your mother's rooms. Your mother prays longer now. She does not smile as easily. The court grows colder. That's what you notice first. Not the politics, not the foreign letters, not the sermons twisting toward unfamiliar tones. You simply notice how many faces now look away when you enter a room. Your tutors are changed. The priests speak in vaguer Latin. One day, your status as princess is subtly dropped in court conversation. Then comes the order to leave your mother's household, to live instead in the service of your infant half-sister Elizabeth. You are 13 and suddenly labeled a bastard. You cry when the messenger arrives, not because you don't understand, but because you do. Your mother refuses to surrender. Her faith is armor. She will not acknowledge the annulment. She will not call herself dowager. She will not call you anything but princess. You cling to her as a ship in storm. But ships sink. You are separated. Mother and daughter torn apart by royal decree. The old servants who used to bow now offer only pity. Some whisper prayers behind closed doors. Others avoid you entirely. No one wants to share your fall from grace. Not when the king still breathes. Your letters to your mother are intercepted. Your correspondence grows desperate, more emotional. Sometimes they allow a reply. Sometimes they don't. The silence between those times is the hardest part. A silence not just from her, but from God. The king says he is the head of the church now. The mass has changed. You are asked to sign a document acknowledging your illegitimacy. You refuse. And then you refuse again. The pressure mounts. You are promised comforts, reinstatement, kindness. If only you will admit that your mother was never truly queen. If only you will say she was wrong, that you were wrong, that everything you were raised to believe is a lie. Sometimes, in the evening, you remember what it was like to be cherished. You remember your father's voice when he told you stories about Arthurian legends. You remember your mother's strong arms pulling you close during storms. You remember the taste of honeyed almonds during 12th night celebrations. Now your meals are plain, and your chamber is cold. The nurses speak only when spoken to. The priest who once celebrated Mass in your presence is gone, replaced by someone you cannot trust. But still, you kneel, you pray, you wait. Your mother dies alone, in exile, far from the courts she once ruled. The news reaches you as a formal announcement, delivered without tenderness. You are not permitted to mourn her publicly. You wear no black. You are offered no condolences. You are, officially, no one's daughter. And yet, the blood remembers. So do you, and if they expect submission, they are mistaken. You have survived, not in comfort, not in favor, but in truth, in faith, in defiance. You are the child of Catherine of Aragon. You are the child of uncertainty, but also of stubborn endurance. And though they may not see it yet, you are still a Tudor. You do not remember when you stopped being safe. There is no singular moment, no thunderclap from God, no grand proclamation in the palace halls. It comes slowly and subtle as the tilt of a prayer book, as the closing of a door that once stood open. You were your father's pearl once, the bright jewel of two great dynasties. But pearls crack when pressed hard enough, and Henry Tudor is pressing. He calls it the king's great matter, but you know it as the slow unraveling of everything you were raised to believe. You are not yet a woman, but you already understand what it means to be caught between two truths, one spoken from the throne, and the other whispered at your mother's bedside. Your father wants a son. The world says he must have one. It is not personal, you are told. It is political. It is necessary. It is God's will. But the truth is simpler and crueler. You were born a girl, and now you are in the way. You still see him sometimes, striding through the gardens, his voice booming as it once did, laughing with those who dare to laugh near him. But he does not turn when you pass. He does not speak your name. You have become a question he cannot answer. Then comes the proclamation. It arrives dressed in the dry, clipped language of royal decree, but its meaning is sharp and personal. Your mother, Catherine of Aragon, is declared never to have been the true wife of the king. The judgment does not come from Rome. It comes from a new church, one invented by your father and loyal to no pope. If your mother was never truly queen, then you were never truly born into royalty. The words used to describe you now are colder, illegitimate, bastard, unfit for succession. A signature and a seal are all it takes to cast you out. There is no trial, no hearing, and no plea for justice. The world simply rearranges itself without you. The first things to vanish are your gowns. The rich velvets, delicate embroidery, and jeweled clasps are taken without ceremony by attendants who won't meet your eyes. The ring your mother gave you on your last shared Christmas disappeared without explanation. Your music tutor is dismissed. The Latin prayers you once whispered aloud are suddenly discouraged, and the sacred Mass begins to resemble something unrecognizable. You try to hold yourself steady, but even the walls of your chambers seem to close in, more bare, more silent, more strange. Then comes the final indignity. You are commanded to leave your household and serve in the nursery of your half-sister Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the child now styled as Princess, your replacement. You are 17 years old and ordered to attend to a baby born of the very woman who supplanted your mother. They tell you this is an honor, that it will build harmony within the royal family. They say you should be grateful. You smile because you must. You are watched too closely to do anything else, and your survival now depends on poise. But inside, something breaks. You rise early, dress the infant, and curtsy before nobles who giggle at her curls while treating your presence like both a curiosity and a warning. You are paraded before visitors like an antique from another age. They never say it outright, but the message is clear. Look how humble Mary has become. Look how harmless. You hold the child in your arms. You kiss her forehead. Her tiny fingers curl around yours with complete trust. You do not hate her? She is innocent of the circumstances that brought her here. She does not understand the cost of her place. Still, the bitterness stings. The shame clings to your skin like damp wool. Your knees ache from too much kneeling. Your spine grows rigid from the silence you must maintain. This is not the life you were raised for. This is not what your mother envisioned when she taught you grace, dignity, and devotion. And yet you endure. At night, you whisper your prayers in Latin, letting the sacred words soak into your pillow. You pray not only for freedom, but for understanding, for your mother's wisdom, for some sign that truth still holds weight in this fractured world. The days pass slowly. Then one evening, a secret letter reaches you. It has been smuggled through a chain of loyal hands. It is from your cousin, Emperor Charles V. The message is brief, but it tells you what you need to hear, that you are still seen. You read the lines over and over again, not because they bring comfort, but because they give you something rarer, strength. And soon after, a new order arrives. You are to sign a document admitting your father's authority over the church, recognizing Anne Boleyn as queen, and relinquishing your claim to the throne. They expect you to accept this quietly. You refuse. You ask for time. They deny it. You ask for guidance. They dismiss you. You say only this: "My mother was queen." That alone is enough to earn their scorn and punishment. One morning, you wake to find yourself confined to your chambers. No reason is given. No messages arrive. Even meals come late. The silence is heavy and deliberate. They tell others you are unwell. But you know the truth. This is isolation, carefully designed to break your will. By the 5th day, hunger gnaws at you and unease settles deep in your chest. You think of your mother, alone, discarded, writing her last letters to a daughter she could no longer protect. You imagine her strength. You summon it now. When the doors finally open, you emerge thinner, quieter, but unbroken. The court resumes its routine, but your every movement is studied more closely than before. They listen for tremors in your voice, cracks in your loyalty, evidence of surrender. They find none. You have not shattered. You have hardened. You learn to keep your face still, and your thoughts behind locked doors. You learn that truth must sometimes be guarded like treasure. That faith, when no longer welcome, must become secret. That surviving this place will require not only obedience, but patience and strategy. Anne Boleyn may hold the crown now. Her child may sleep in sheets of silk, but you carry something neither of them possesses: memory. You remember what it was to be adored. You remember your father's love, before it was lost to ambition. You remember the sound of Latin hymns rising to heaven in stone chapels. And memory, you realize, is its own kind of power. They may strip you of titles, robes, and jewels. They may call you names, but you are still your mother's child. You are still formed from that same fierce resolve. The world may try to forget who you were, but you do not, and you do not forgive. Maybe not ever. You are no longer the girl who once smiled beneath a coronet of pearls. You are something leaner now, sharper, made not from privilege, but from survival. Something they thought could be erased, but still stands. You were born a princess. They call you a bastard. But in your soul, the crown remains exactly where it was. You live now in a world where the sound of Latin has been driven out like a disease. The chapels smell the same: beeswax, stone, a trace of damp air from the carved vaults. But the words are thinner. The rhythm is different. The prayers no longer feel like prayers. The familiar shape of the Mass has been stripped away and rebuilt into something cold, hard, and hollow. There are no bells to lift the bread, no incense curling toward heaven. Only quiet men with cautious voices and eyes that never look up when they speak of God. You keep your own prayer book hidden. The cover is worn where your thumb rests, the pages soft at the corners. It smells of your childhood, of your mother, of whispered Ave Marias, of candlelight during storms. Some nights, after everyone has gone to bed, you kneel in the dark and trace the words by memory. You say the rosary slowly, as if every bead will anchor you to a truth the court is trying to erase. You are watched, always. At meals, at prayers, in the corridors where portraits of old kings seem to shift in the candlelight. Servants glance at you and quickly turn away. Courtiers speak in lowered voices when you enter the room. You are still the daughter of a king, but that no longer means anything safe. You are Catholic in a Protestant court, and even your silence draws suspicion. There are new rules now, new churchmen, new rituals, and sermons that no longer speak of saints. The king has become head of the church. His will is the new gospel. Those who disagree vanish, some dismissed, others imprisoned, and still others led to the flames. You watch carefully. You listen more than you speak. You have learned that speaking truth too loudly is dangerous, especially when it is not the truth others want to hear. Once, you are summoned to attend the king's service, the new one. You stand still at the back of the chapel, your hands folded tightly in your sleeves. You do not kneel at the wrong moments. You do not cross yourself. You remain upright, your face calm, though your heart pounds in your chest. You know this is a test. You pass it not by giving in, but by giving nothing. You offer no rebellion, but no allegiance either. Later, a lady-in-waiting leans close and whispers that the king was pleased with your obedience. You nod politely. You do not tell her that obedience and belief are not the same thing. You do not tell her that you spent the night before in tears, begging God to help you keep your soul unbroken. You say nothing. That is how you survive. There are moments still when you remember laughter. You remember your father's hands lifting you onto his horse, the thrill of riding fast through spring fields. You remember music in the great hall, the feel of your mother's hand smoothing your hair before bed. But those memories are like glass beneath your feet, sharp, beautiful, and dangerous to linger on too long. Now, even joy feels like something you must borrow in secret. You try to keep your days orderly. You rise early, walk through the gardens when the mist still clings to the hedges, and read quietly in the corner of the library where no one bothers you. Sometimes you are given small tasks, letters to copy, documents to deliver, minor ceremonies to attend, but nothing of importance. You are not part of plans or policy. You are not trusted with decisions. You are a royal ghost, tolerated, but no longer welcome. There are others at court who once called you friend, but they do not speak to you now unless pressed. Too many alliances have ended in disgrace. Too many fortunes have changed overnight. To be close to you is to risk falling with you. Even those who pity you avoid you. You understand. You do not blame them. You stopped hoping for protection long ago. Your faith is not something you chose. It was given to you by your mother, shaped by years of prayer and example, reinforced by the silence of exile and the loss of everything you once had. It is the only thing that cannot be taken from you. So you cling to it, not as comfort, but as armor. It steadies you when everything else shifts. It reminds you who you are, even when the world says otherwise. One winter evening, you are called before a royal official who speaks with the authority of the crown. He offers you a choice, though it does not feel like one. If you renounce Rome and embrace the new order, your life will become easier. You could be restored to favor, perhaps even given a new title. You could walk through the palace with dignity again, not as an outcast, but as a daughter, once more accepted. He waits for your answer. You look him in the eye and speak softly, clearly. You cannot do what he asks. You cannot deny the truth of your upbringing, your conscience, or your soul. His smile is tight. He tells you that pride is dangerous. You nod once. So is faith. When you are alone again, you feel the cost of your decision settle into your bones. There will be no comfort for you here, no return to the ease of your childhood. You are a stranger in your own land, a candle flickering in a wind that never stops. But the flame still holds. You are not naive. You know how close you walk to ruin. But you also know something else, that belief without consequence is just decoration. Real conviction is forged in trials, in loneliness, in choosing what is right, even when it brings nothing but more pain. You are Mary Tudor. You are no longer the beloved child. You are no longer welcome in your father's favor. But you still belong to something older, something deeper than court fashions or king's laws. And in your quiet defiance, you are not alone. Not truly. There are those across the country who still cross themselves when no one is watching, who still keep the old prayers hidden beneath loose floorboards, who still believe the Mass has not changed. You do not know their names, but they are out there, waiting. The message arrived with no ceremony, no horns, and not even a royal summon. Just a few lines delivered on a winter morning when the frost clung to every stone wall and the halls of the palace seemed quieter than usual. Your mother was dead. That was the word they used. Dead. Not past, not departed, not taken by God. Just dead. You stare at the page, reading the sentence again, as if it might shift into something softer if you blinked hard enough. But it doesn't. It stays sharp, like a blade. You knew it was coming. Everyone did. She had been unwell for years, banished to Kimbleton Castle, left to live out her final days in damp chambers with only a few loyal servants and her crucifix for comfort. No visits, no proper physician, no farewell. They made certain she died far from court, far from power, far from you. And yet the news breaks something loose inside you that you cannot hold together. There had been hope, faint and foolish, that she might live long enough for the wind to change, that you might see her again. Speak to her one last time. Hear her voice, not through rumors or the lines of a smuggled letter, but in person, warm and real. Instead, you are left with silence, the kind that seeps into the bones and lingers. You clutch the small crucifix she once gave you, the metal worn smooth from years of prayers whispered in hiding. You press it to your lips, but no words come. Not at first. Just breathe. Shallow, uneven, and shaking. The court doesn't pause for your grief. Life moves forward, brisk and indifferent. There is no public mourning for the woman who had once been queen. No black banners, no official sorrow. Instead, whispers float through corridors. Some say her heart was found blackened in the autopsy, a sure sign of poison, perhaps by Anne herself. Others dismiss it as superstition, eager to silence anything that might make her a martyr. You don't entertain either version aloud. You hold your grief where they cannot touch it, deep, guarded, and private. With her gone, a part of you feels severed. Not just the bond between mother and daughter, but the last fragile thread tying you to a time when you were cherished, when you were still addressed as princess, still welcome at your father's side. Her death doesn't just end her life, it erases a piece of your own. You become something else in that moment, not just alone, but emptied. That emptiness becomes a space you fill with prayer, not the new prayers forced upon the court by your father's church, but the ones she taught you, the old rhythms, Latin words that roll through your mouth like memory. You kneel longer now. You speak more quietly, but more often. Your devotion sharpens, not to be seen, but because it is all you have left. Each time you fold your hands, it is to feel hers holding yours. Each time you bow your head, You return to the nights you spent beside her bed, whispering Ave Maria into the dark. Your faith becomes the only inheritance she was allowed to leave you. Not lands, not titles, not a place in the line of succession, but a belief that truth is not decided by men in power, that dignity can survive disgrace, that God sees even what courts ignore. This becomes your armor, your ritual, your defiance. They think her death will break you, that you will finally yield, that without her guidance, you will bend to the pressure. But they do not understand what kind of daughter she raised. You do not bend. You root yourself deeper. You become stiller, not weaker. You wear plain gowns now, your jewels stripped away years ago. Yet you carry yourself like the woman she taught you to be. Quiet, watchful, composed. There are moments when the pain crashes back, unannounced. A scent, a phrase, a glimpse of something she once wore, and your breath catches in your throat. You never cry in front of them. But when you are alone, behind the heavy door of your chamber, you let it spill, slow and without sound. There is no one to comfort you, no one to speak her name aloud. Even that has become dangerous. You grieve in a language the court no longer speaks. What they fail to realize is this: they have taken everything they could, and yet the most important part remains untouched. Her belief in you. Her conviction that you were born for more than servitude, that you were not the mistake they named you. That memory and truth have their own kind of power, and that someday the world will shift again. In losing her, you lose the last person who loved you without condition, who saw you not as a pawn, not as a threat, but simply as her child. The loss is immeasurable. It echoes through your days, shaping how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you remain still in a court that wants you to disappear. You become less visible to them, but more certain of yourself. Time dulls the sharpest edges of sorrow, but never fully erases it. You learn to speak her name again, quietly, during prayer. You picture her as she was before the exile, dressed in deep red, eyes steady, voice firm. You recall her words. Hold fast to who you are, even when others do not. Those words become your anchor. As months pass, you notice fewer people speak of her at all. The court moves on. So does the king. He marries again and again. Each new queen more decorated than the last, each new daughter or son baptized in this strange, reformed faith. But you remain still. You refuse to drift. You hold fast, not only to your beliefs, but to the quiet certainty that your mother's story, and your own, are not yet finished. One day, perhaps, the silence around her name will lift. One day, others may remember her not as a discarded wife, but as the rightful queen she was. Until then, you carry her legacy in your breath, in your spine, in your prayers. You live each day not in defiance of their expectations, but in devotion to what she stood for. And that, more than any crown or title, is what makes you unshakable. You are her daughter. That will never change. You learn not to flinch when your father marries again. The first time, the court is loud with celebration. Tapestries are rehung, trumpets sound, and Anne Boleyn stands where your mother once did. But she does not stand long. Her fall is quick and final. One day, you are forced to attend to her child. The next, you hear whispers that the queen has been arrested. You do not ask why. You already know what happens to women who fall from favor. You are 17 when Anne is beheaded. No mourning clothes are sent. No prayers are offered. It is as if she is erased. Within weeks, a new woman arrives, Jane Seymour. Quiet, plain, and cautious. She speaks gently to you when others are not listening. She tries to bring peace between you and your father. And when she gives birth to a son, Edward, you feel a shift, not just in the line of succession, but in the weight of your own survival. Jane's child is what your father wanted all along. A boy, an heir who could carry his name without question. For a brief time, you fear your own existence matters even less than before. But then, Jane dies. Her death in childbirth dims the celebration. The court grows quieter. You are invited back, not fully restored, but no longer discarded. It is a small opening, and you take it. You sign the oath. You acknowledge the king's authority. You accept that you are no longer first in line. It is not a surrender. It is a calculation. The air around the throne is dangerous, and safety, even partial, is better than exile. Then comes Anne of Cleves. She arrives from Germany with a face that pleases no one. The court jokes behind her back, and your father grows distant almost at once. Their marriage lasts only 6 months before it is annulled. Yet, during those months, you observe. You see how quickly favor can vanish. You see how thin the thread is that ties any woman to power. And you begin to wonder if you are safer now, not being a wife or mother, but something else. Something harder to place and harder to remove. Catherine Howard follows, young, lively, and naive. She dances through the halls and laughs too loudly. She calls you sister and tries to draw you into her little world. You stay polite, distant. You know better than to grow close to someone so exposed. Her fall is slower than Anne Boleyn's, but no less brutal. When she is arrested, you do not blink. You do not cry. The crown has teeth, and Catherine never saw them coming. By now, you understand your father in a way no one else does. He is not cruel without purpose. He is afraid of death, of rebellion, of time running out. Each new wife is another attempt to secure the future. Each child, each promise of stability, is weighed against the shadows of doubt. Edward is his pride. Elizabeth is his reminder of failure. And you, still loyal, still present, are something he cannot fully ignore. The final wife, Catherine Parr, is different. She is older, educated, careful with her words. She does not seek your affection, but earns your respect. Under her guidance, the court softens. She encourages learning. She values peace. She does not try to replace your mother. Instead, she leaves space for your memory to breathe. With her influence, you begin to see a path back to your father's favor, not as the heir, but as a daughter who has survived everything he has created. You are older now, not the frightened girl forced to curtsy before a child, not the outcast with nothing but prayer to hold on to. You have grown quieter, sharper. You no longer expect affection. But when your father invites you to court more often, when he begins to speak to you without bitterness, you accept it. You understand how rare it is. In those final years, he softens toward you. Perhaps it is age. Perhaps it is guilt. He has no more sons, only one, and the boy is sickly. Elizabeth is clever, but too much like her mother. You are steady. You are familiar. You are still here. He allows you a household again, grants you a title, even if it is not the one you were born with. He includes you, at last, in the line of succession. Not first, not second, but named. That alone is a victory. It means your place is written into the law, and that your future, though uncertain, is not entirely erased. You do not forget what he did to your mother. You do not forgive the years of silence, the shame, the forced obedience. But when he dies, and the court enters mourning, you wear black. You walk in the procession. You stand beside your half-siblings and nod when they call you Lady Mary. Because you are still standing. Because you have watched queens rise and fall like seasons. Because through all of it, you remained. You do not have to be anyone's favorite to endure. You have learned how to wait, how to listen, how to move quietly through corridors that once tried to lock you out. Your path has been stolen, rerouted, and rewritten. But you are still walking it. Each wife left a mark. Each marriage redrew the line of inheritance. And yet, despite all the shifting titles and broken vows, you have survived every change. And now, at last, your name is back where it belongs. On parchment, in royal ink, where it belongs. You step into a world that feels colder than the stone walls around you. Your half-brother Edward is now king, a boy barely old enough to understand the weight of the crown he wears. But the real power doesn't lie with him. It rests with his advisors, men whose sharp eyes and sharper tongues have already decided what your place in this kingdom will be. From the start of Edward's reign, their suspicion of you is clear and unrelenting. They see not a girl with a claim to the throne, but a threat to the fragile new order they are building. At court, the shift in power is unmistakable. The Protestant reforms your father began are pushed with fierce determination, and your Catholic faith becomes a mark against you. The Latin prayers you cling to, the Mass you quietly attend, the memories of your mother's devout faith, all become dangerous acts in a kingdom that now demands obedience to a new church and a new way of worshiping. Your refusal to abandon the old rites is met with veiled warnings and public snubs. Your presence at court is tolerated only as long as it serves the image of peace. The moment you step beyond those invisible lines, your very existence is questioned. You find yourself constantly watched. Courtiers whisper behind your back, weaving stories of disloyalty and danger. They question why you hold on to traditions they label as superstition and treason. You sense their growing impatience, the way their gazes linger, not with curiosity, but with cold calculation. You try to keep your faith private, to pray in silence and avoid confrontations, but even your most careful steps seem to ripple through the court, like a stone thrown into still water. One day, you are summoned before Edward's council. The men who speak for the boy king do not bother with kindness or subtlety. They demand you swear allegiance not only to the crown, but to the Reformed Church. They want you to denounce your mother's religion, to confess that the new order is right and just, and that your own Catholic practices are misguided at best, rebellious at worst. They expect you to admit that your claim to the throne is invalid under this new faith. You refuse. You hold your head high and say nothing but that you remain loyal to your conscience and to the faith you were taught to cherish. Their faces harden, but they do not arrest you. Not yet. Instead, they tighten the noose around your life, reducing your household, limiting your attendance, cutting off your funds. They make it clear that your survival depends on your silence and compliance. Every day feels like a test. You learn to mask your fear and frustration behind a calm exterior, but inside, your heart aches. The halls you walk echo with the absence of warmth. The family you once knew is fractured beyond repair. Your half-brother, a boy under the sway of men who see you as a relic of a past they want to erase, seems distant and cold. You wonder if he even remembers who you are. Despite the pressure, you hold on to what little power you still have, the quiet strength of memory and faith. You gather your thoughts in secret, whispering prayers to saints who once watched over your mother. You remind yourself of the dignity you carry simply by enduring. Your resolve becomes a silent rebellion against the tide of change that threatens to wash you away. Rumors begin to circulate that your Catholic sympathies make you a danger to the realm, a rallying point for enemies of the new religion. You hear whispers of plots and conspiracies, some real, some imagined by those who want you gone. The court grows more hostile. Invitations to attend Mass are revoked, your personal chaplain is dismissed, and the sacred objects you treasured are taken from your rooms. You stand stripped, not just of possessions, but of the very symbols of your identity. Yet, you refuse to bow. Your faith is no longer public, but it burns quietly within you. The world around you may have shifted, but you remain steadfast. Your prayers take on a fierceness born of desperation and hope. You know the road ahead will be long and lonely, but you carry a legacy far greater than titles or crowns. It is the legacy of survival, of memory, and of a spirit unbroken. Even as Edward's reign chills the kingdom and your prospects grow dimmer, you're determined not to vanish into the shadows. You are the daughter of a queen who once ruled with strength and grace. You are the last living reminder of a faith and a claim that others seek to erase. And in your heart, the crown waits, not abandoned, but poised to be claimed again when the time is right. You move carefully through the halls, knowing eyes follow your every step. The court is no longer a place where you can be open with your thoughts or faith. Every glance, every whispered word could be a trap. But deep inside, something stubborn refuses to bend. You find small ways to resist, quiet actions that carry weight, even if the world barely notices. You continue to hold secret masses in hidden corners, gathering a few loyal souls who still cling to the old ways. The familiar words, spoken softly in Latin, offer comfort and a link to the past that refuses to die. Each whispered prayer, each muted hymn, is a small rebellion against the church that your father built, the church that demands you deny who you are. In those secret moments, you feel a fragile power, a connection to something greater than yourself. You cannot afford to be careless. The Protestant court watches closely, suspicious of any hint of loyalty to Rome or to your mother's faith. Yet, you move with quiet resolve, aware that every gesture carries risk. You send letters, carefully folded and hidden, to your cousin, the Emperor Charles V, the one remaining ally who still recognizes your claim and your faith. Your messages travel through loyal hands, slipping past guards and spies, keeping a thread of hope alive across dangerous distances. It is a tightrope you walk. One misstep could mean imprisonment or worse. But you refuse to fall silent. Your days are spent performing your duties, pretending to accept the world as it is forced upon you, while your nights belong to your true self. You think often of your mother, Catherine of Aragon, whose faith was never broken, despite exile and disgrace. You remember the stories of her quiet courage, the way she faced rejection without losing her dignity. You draw strength from her example, knowing that though you have been cast aside, you are not defeated. This hidden resistance, these small acts of faith and loyalty, become your secret armor. The court's suspicion grows. You sense the undercurrents of gossip, the barely veiled warnings behind polite smiles. Your attendance at Protestant services is measured, your answers cautious, your heart distant. Yet beneath the surface, you nurture the flame of your true beliefs. You do not shout. You do not challenge openly. Instead, you let your quiet actions speak louder than words. Every Mass you hold in secret, every coded letter sent, every Latin prayer whispered behind closed doors is a statement. You remain true to who you are, despite the world's demands. You understand the stakes. This is not just about faith, but survival. The court will not tolerate dissent, no matter how quiet. Still, you refuse to let your identity be erased. You are patient, knowing that time may yet turn in your favor. You watch and wait, gathering strength from your memories and your secret prayers. You know that your resistance, though hidden, is real and enduring. Even in the loneliness of your chambers, you refuse to be broken. The walls may be thick, but your spirit is stronger. You remind yourself daily, though the crown may rest elsewhere, your place in the story has not been erased. Your faith is not a weakness, but a shield, and your quiet defiance, a form of power that no court intrigue can take away. The news of King Edward's death hits like a thunderclap, shaking the very foundation of the kingdom. You hear whispers everywhere, growing louder each day, about what will happen next. The boy king, who was meant to rule long and steady, is gone, and with him, the fragile peace that kept the realm balanced teeters on the edge of chaos. Suddenly, a new name emerges, Lady Jane Grey. She is declared queen, but her reign lasts no more than 9 days. The whole thing feels like a cruel trick played by the nobles behind closed doors, a desperate attempt to keep you from claiming the crown that is rightfully yours. You watch, heart pounding, as the court quickly shifts allegiance, many swearing loyalty to Jane, as if the flicker of a new flame could snuff out the memory of your birthright. Yet, outside the gilded halls and whispering corridors, the people know the truth. The common folk, those who tend the fields, sell their wares at market, and pray quietly in their homes, see you as the rightful monarch. Their support is not shouted in grand proclamations, but felt in the steady swell of murmurs and hopeful glances. You become more than a symbol. You are the promise of stability and tradition, a living connection to the past they trust. Word spreads fast, carried on the winds and the tongues of those loyal to the old ways, and soon the tide begins to turn. Nobles who had backed Jane falter, sensing the shifting power beneath their feet. Even those who sought to keep you sidelined hesitate, knowing the people will not be ignored. The drama unfolds quickly. Armies are raised, banners unfurled, but there is little bloodshed. Unlike the brutal clashes of years past, your ascent is marked by the quiet strength of popular will. Towns open their gates, soldiers lay down their arms, and lords send emissaries bearing pledges of fealty. The streets fill with those who celebrate the return of the rightful queen, their cheers drowning out the silence that once surrounded you. You are not a shadow anymore. You are a force, carried by the voices of the many, rather than the whispers of the few. Despite the excitement and the sudden shift in fortune, you know the path ahead will not be easy. The scars left by the recent turmoil run deep, and the delicate balance of power can tip with the slightest misstep. But for now, the crown rests on your head, heavy yet familiar. You feel the weight of centuries, the hopes of your mother and ancestors pressing down on you. This moment is not just about reclaiming a throne, but restoring a legacy that others tried to erase. In the quiet moments between the ceremonies and proclamations, you reflect on how far you have come. From the girl cast out and labeled illegitimate, you have become the queen the people trust to lead. The common folk see in you a return to tradition and faith, a reminder of what the kingdom once was and what it could be again. Their loyalty is the foundation upon which your reign begins, stronger than any decree or royal edict. You understand now that power is not given by birth alone, but earned through the hearts of those you serve. Your reign begins not with bloodshed, but with a promise to heal, to restore, and to lead with a steady hand. The Lady Jane crisis is over, and you stand at the center of a kingdom ready for change. Though the road will be long and the challenges many, the voices of the people who lifted you up will echo in your mind, guiding you through the trials ahead. This is your moment. The crown is yours, and with it comes the chance to shape history, not as a fallen princess, but as a queen born of resilience and the unwavering support of her people. You stand beneath the heavy canopy of the grand hall, the air thick with the murmurs of those gathered. The familiar buzz of whispers echoes around you, a mixture of hope, fear, and the weight of the past pressing down. At last, you are crowned queen. The golden circlet settles on your head with a solemn grace, heavier than any jewel, not because of its weight, but because of what it carries. It is not just a symbol of power. It is a crown forged from decades of loss, struggle, and unyielding faith. You feel the eyes of the court on you, some filled with genuine respect, others heavy with doubt. The kingdom you inherit is fractured, a land divided by years of upheaval. The wounds left by your father's reign and the swift changes of your half-brother's short rule have not healed. The memory of the broken church and shattered loyalties lingers in every whispered conversation and every cautious glance. You sense that many expect you to fail, to be yet another fleeting ruler in a turbulent sea of dynasties. But you know, this moment is different. This crown is not given lightly. It is a call to restore what was lost, to heal the wounds inflicted on your mother's legacy and on the faith that shaped you. You have spent your life watching the church you love be torn apart, watching prayers be silenced and traditions uprooted. Now, you are determined to return England to the fold you believe is right and true. Catholicism, for you, is not merely a religion. It is the heart of the nation, the thread that weaves people together, and the source of your own hope. Your belief in this mission is fierce. It is born from the pain of exile and rejection, from the years spent in shadow, watching others claim what was once yours. You hold fast to the idea that restoring the old ways will bring redemption, not only for the country, but for your own soul. You believe that through this act, the sins of the past might be cleansed, and peace might finally settle over the land. This conviction shapes every decision you make, every decree you sign, and every word you speak. Yet the path is far from easy. The divisions run deep, and those who once pledged allegiance to your father and mother are wary, uncertain if this time things will truly change. Protestant ideas have taken root in many corners, and there are those who resist, who see your reign as a threat to the freedoms they have begun to enjoy. You sense the tension beneath the surface, small rebellions, secret gatherings, and eyes watching your every move, waiting for you to falter. Still, you press forward with determination. You restore the Mass in its ancient form, inviting priests to return and churches to reopen. You commission grand ceremonies that remind the people of their shared history and faith. Every ritual, every gesture is meant to heal the broken bonds and remind England of its place within the universal church. Your court reflects this mission, filled with clergy and loyalists who share your vision. But even among them, doubts sometimes surface, as if the shadows of past betrayals still linger. This responsibility weighs heavily on your shoulders. You are not just a ruler. You are a symbol of hope for some, a target of scorn for others. Each day, you navigate the treacherous politics of court, balancing mercy with firmness, faith with pragmatism. You understand that to rebuild the nation, you must also rebuild trust. You meet with nobles, clergy, and common folk alike, listening to their fears and hopes. You recognize that the scars of the past will not vanish overnight, but you are willing to endure the struggle because the stakes are so high. At night, away from the prying eyes of courtiers, you retreat into prayer, seeking strength and guidance. You ask for forgiveness for the sins committed in your name, for wisdom to lead with justice, and for patience as the kingdom slowly mends. Your faith sustains you in moments of doubt and weariness, reminding you that your role is part of a larger story, one that stretches beyond the throne, beyond your own life. You remember your mother's courage, her unwavering devotion even in exile, and you carry her spirit with you. You also carry the memory of those who opposed you, the betrayals and the heartbreak, but you refuse to be defined by them. Instead, you choose to be defined by your vision, a vision of a united England under the guidance of the Church, where the wounds of the past might finally be healed through faith and redemption. The crown on your head is a burden and a blessing, a reminder of what you have lost and what you still hope to gain. It is a symbol of your resolve to reclaim not just a throne, but the soul of a nation. As you look out over the crowd gathered to witness your coronation, you see faces full of expectation and fear, loyalty and skepticism. You understand the long road ahead, but in your heart, you know that this is your moment. The moment when the daughter of a fallen queen becomes the sovereign of her people, and the hope of restoring an ancient faith breathes anew in the land. In this moment, you are queen at last. You do not begin with fire. You begin with silence, careful steps, letters drafted with the precision of a pen that remembers every scar. When the crown is placed on your head, it is not vengeance that guides your hand, but memory, the weight of a promise, the echo of Latin prayers, the quiet certainty that the old faith, your mother's faith, deserves not only reverence, but restoration. You do not rush. You know England is brittle, weary from decades of upheaval. The people have seen altars torn down, priests married off, monasteries turned to rubble, and prayers rewritten into strange rhythms. So, you begin slowly. The Mass returns first, quietly and without fanfare. Latin once more fills the chapels, and the chalice is raised with the old reverence. You do not demand it. You simply allow it. And the people, some of them, begin to return. Not out of fear, but familiarity. Next, you bring back the bishops who remained loyal to Rome, men who endured exile, silence, or disgrace rather than abandon the church. You do not parade them. You restore them. And in doing so, you make clear that your reign will not be about novelty. It will be about correction, steadiness, the righting of what was bent. Parliament hesitates, but you are patient. You speak of order, of tradition, of conscience. You remind them that heresy is not freedom. It is fracture. Then, almost without resistance, the heresy acts are revived. It is not a threat. It is the law as it once was. Your counselors advise caution, and for a time, you listen. The wounds left by your father and brother are not yet healed, and you do not wish to reopen them with sudden force. You wish to bind them first, to calm, to persuade. And still, there are murmurs, whispers in corners, flickers of discontent from those who preach rebellion under the veil of Scripture. You see the tracts printed in secret. You hear of sermons held in fields and kitchens. You know what they call you behind closed doors: papist, tyrant, Jezebel. But you do not flinch. Your conviction is too deeply rooted, your resolve formed not in comfort, but in exile, humiliation, and prayer. You appeal to Parliament again, this time not just to restore practice, but allegiance. You ask that England return to the authority of the Pope, not as an enemy, but as a father. The vote is tense. Negotiations stretch for weeks, but finally the break is undone. A formal reconciliation is signed. The realm is brought back into communion with Rome. The land groans beneath the shift, but does not split. You have not forced a leap. You have guided a return. For a moment, there is calm. Candles once extinguished are lit again on altars. Processions return to the streets. Bells toll in Latin rhythm, and even your critics acknowledge the beauty of the old rites. It is not yet peace, but it is a kind of stillness. And in that stillness, you breathe. But not all are willing to bend. There are those who cannot see your gentleness, who do not recognize patience as mercy. They resist openly, claiming conscience. They refuse to attend Mass. They print defiance, preach sedition. You offer them pardon. Some accept, others persist. Then the trials begin, not hastily, not gleefully, but lawfully. Heresy is not opinion. It is a crime, and crimes, once proven, are punished. Still, you hold back. You review each case with care. You consult your advisors. You grant reprieves when possible. But the number grows, and your patience thins. When the fires begin, you do not look away, but you do not rejoice. You see them as necessary, not cruel. A shepherd defends her flock. A queen defends her realm. To allow poison to spread is not mercy. It is neglect. And yet, you do not forget the burden. Each judgment weighs on you. Each name, each face. You pray for their souls, even as the smoke rises. You do not sleep easily. You never have. But you believe this is the price of salvation. Not just your own, but your kingdom's. The foreign press begins to circle your reign with new names. Bloody Mary. They do not know you. They do not care to understand. They paint your caution as cruelty, your duty as madness. But you are not ruled by how you are remembered. You are ruled by what must be done. You did not ask for the Reformation. You were born into its ashes. But if God has placed you here, if the crown was set upon your head, not by ambition, but by providence, then you will not fail in your task. Even as your health weakens, you continue. The laws are restored, the churches rebuilt. You name loyal bishops and ensure the next generation of priests will be trained not in rebellion, but in reverence. You ensure that even if your reign is short, your correction will last. You restore more than buildings. You restore order. And in your final days, when the sickness creeps closer, when your womb remains empty, and your hope for a Catholic heir fades, you do not retreat. You do not break. You kneel one last time and place your trust where it has always belonged, not in popularity, but in faith. You pray not for legacy, but for forgiveness. They may never understand. They may burn your name into history with scorn. But you know the truth. You were never the tyrant they feared. You were the daughter of Catherine, the child who endured disgrace, the queen who stood unshaken when others bent. You did not undo the Reformation in anger. You did it in grief, in memory, in hope. And if that is not enough to absolve you, then let the judgment come. You are ready. You agree to marry a man you've barely met. A prince? Yes, but not just any prince. Philip of Spain, son of the emperor. A man whose very name sends whispers rippling through your court and panic through your people. They call him a foreigner, a conqueror in disguise, a Catholic invader who will turn England into a Spanish province. They accuse you of betrayal before the ink even dries on the treaty. But you do not flinch. You have waited too long for this crown, endured too much humiliation, to rule alone forever. You believe this union will strengthen your reign. You believe it will restore the old faith. You believe it is what England needs. You are queen now, but nothing is ever simple. Parliament grumbles. The council objects. Your people riot in the streets. But you keep your tone steady, your gaze firm. This marriage is not for love, though you try to hope it might lead there. It is about survival. You need an heir. You need strength. You need an alliance powerful enough to hold back the enemies that press from every direction. Enemies in your court, in your pulpits, even in your own blood. Your cousin Elizabeth, ever smiling, ever watched, waits for your failure. You know this. Still, the match must go forward. He arrives in the summer, tall, fair-skinned, his expression unreadable. He wears black like a shadow and speaks in precise Castilian, though he makes an effort with English. You watch him descend the gangplank, and for a moment you forget the crowds and the protests and the quiet fury of your nobles. You see only a man who might finally share your burden. The wedding takes place in Winchester, grand and solemn. You wear cloth of gold. He wears white. When he takes your hand, his grip is cool, his fingers gloved. The ceremony is formal, deliberate, observed by a court unsure whether to celebrate or brace for war. You speak your vows with confidence, though your heart feels distant. You tell yourself this is what queens do. They do not wait for romance. They create alliances. They think beyond their own comfort. After the wedding, he is named King of England, but only in title. The terms are clear. He will hold no real power here. He will not appoint ministers or shape laws. You have ensured this carefully, though your people still mutter. They do not trust him. They do not trust you. And yet, for a time, you believe it can work. You learn his habits. He is reserved, methodical, devout. You attend Mass together. You dine side by side in silence more often than in speech. Sometimes he offers a small smile, a polite gesture, a word in Latin or Spanish that you remember from childhood. He is courteous, never cruel, but there is always distance. His heart belongs elsewhere, to Spain, to empire, to duty. You are part of a larger plan, a means to a dynastic end. Still, you hope. You feel the signs before you dare speak them aloud. A missed cycle, a flutter of sickness, a new weight behind your ribs. At last, you let yourself imagine the future. A child, a prince or princess born of both England and Spain. A true heir. The Catholic line restored. Your people at peace. Your soul at rest. But the signs fade. The pain comes instead. The physicians murmur uncertain words. The swelling retreats. The hope slips quietly from your grasp. There is no child. There was never a child. Only your body, tricked by longing and fear and desperate belief. You do not weep. Not where they can see. Philip leaves soon after. He says it is duty. He is summoned by his father, who has abdicated the throne of Spain, leaving Philip as king in his place. You do not argue. You cannot. You kiss his cheek, feel the cold brush of his beard, and step back as he boards the ship. He does not return for many months. In his absence, the whispers grow louder. They call you barren. They call you cursed. Some say the false pregnancy was God's punishment for the Protestants you have burned. You try to block the noise. You remind yourself of your duty. You remind your people that you are their rightful queen. But even in your own court, support begins to thin. You continue writing to Philip, though his replies are brief, polite, measured. He speaks of politics, trade, alliances, rarely of you. You offer your affection in every line. Try to remind him that England is his ally, not just his duty. But you feel the emptiness growing. Your letters begin to sound like prayers. Private, unanswered, devout. Eventually, he returns, but only to ask for help. He is at war with France and needs your navy, your coin, your loyalty. You grant him all of it. You sign orders with a steady hand. You support him not because he has loved you, but because you believe this is the role you must fulfill. Your people grumble again. They curse the loss of Calais. They whisper that your Spanish marriage has brought ruin, that the blood on your hands is the mark of a tyrant. They mock you behind closed doors. They chant Elizabeth's name. Still, you do not bend. You lie awake at night, hands folded over your abdomen, imagining what might have been. You do not hate Philip. You understand him. Like you, he was born into duty. But while you clung to the hope of shared purpose, he always looked past you, to empire, to legacy, to Spain. You wanted a union that would bind two great kingdoms, a bond strong enough to restore the faith of your mothers and protect the future of your crown. Instead, you have a marriage written in cold ink, shadowed by loss and mistrust. Still, you do not regret it. You would choose it again, if only for the chance to prove that a Catholic queen could rule in strength and dignity. And perhaps that is what frightens them most. Not Philip's foreign tongue, not your barren womb, but the sight of a woman who dares to reign as boldly as any man. Alone if she must, unloved perhaps, but never afraid. You wake one morning to a sharp knock at the door. Before you can speak, it opens. One of your advisors enters with news not spoken softly, not delayed or dressed in pleasantries. There is unrest in Kent. A man named Thomas Wyatt is leading men toward London, and their aim is not uncertain. They march against your marriage, against Spain, against you. You had expected discontent. The match with Philip of Spain was never going to please everyone. Some whisper that you have placed England into the hands of foreigners. Others fear that your throne will soon be shared, then surrendered. You had seen the wary glances when the betrothal was announced, the nobles who pressed smiles over clenched jaws. Still, you thought they would grumble, protest perhaps in Parliament, but not take up arms, not rise. But Wyatt has, and he is not alone. Thousands rally behind him, drawn by hatred of Spain and fear of Catholic control. They speak of national pride, but it is power they seek. In their hands, rebellion is framed as rescue. They say they march to save England, but they do not hide that it is you they wish to remove. They do not wish for compromise. They want you broken. The city holds its breath. You move through your chambers as if through water. Every report you receive carries some new anxiety. More men gathering, more towns sympathizing, more hesitation from your own council. Some advisors urge you to flee the capital, to ride north and regroup, but you refuse. You will not abandon your seat of power like a frightened girl. You are queen. If you run now, you may never return. So you remain. You walk through the palace with your head held high, even as the noise beyond the walls grows louder. The streets are restless. At night, you cannot sleep. You listen to the footsteps in the halls, the murmur of guards, the occasional cry in the distance. In the silence between sounds, you think of your father, how he would have responded, how he would have crushed such defiance without pause. You wonder if they remember that you are his daughter. Then the rebels reach Southwark. Their numbers are not as great as they had hoped, and the city gates do not open for them as expected. Still, they press on. They move along the Thames, hoping to cross into the heart of London. You stand before the people yourself at Guildhall, dressed not in royal silks, but in plain dignity, and you speak without trembling. You do not flinch. You do not apologize. You say only this: you will not yield to traitors. You will defend England. You will remain queen. And something shifts. The city does not fall. The gates stay closed. Some rebels scatter. Others are captured. Wyatt is taken alive. The rebellion ends not in triumph, but in blood. It is over in days, though it feels like weeks. Your heart does not calm when the dust settles. Your hands do not stop shaking, because even in defeat, the uprising leaves a mark. Punishment follows swiftly. Those who rose against you must pay for what they did, not only to restore order, but to make clear that the crown is not a prize to be seized. The executions begin. Heads are taken, bodies displayed. Some are drawn through the streets as a warning. You attend no spectacles, but you know each sentence. You approve them. You read the names. You sign. But then another name appears: Elizabeth. Your half-sister is arrested. She claims ignorance, insists she had no knowledge of the plot. You want to believe her. Part of you still remembers holding her as a baby. Another part recalls the smiles exchanged between her and those now dead. She had always been a figure of Protestant hope, and you wonder if her silence in this moment hides more than innocence. Still, you hesitate. You do not rush to have her executed. You send her to the tower, yes, but you do not send the axe. You are torn between blood and mercy, between memory and duty. The court watches your every move. Some urge leniency. Others cry for justice. Your decision will define more than one life. In the end, she survives. The rebellion dies, but the fire it lit continues to smolder in shadows. People begin to speak of you differently, not as the steady queen who restored order, but as the one who shed too much blood. They begin to use words like cruel, harsh, vengeful. They forget that you showed restraint. They forget what the rebellion sought to destroy. The damage, though, is not just in perception. Something within you hardens. The betrayal cuts deeper than you expected. You had known your reign would be difficult, that your faith would divide rather than unite. But this uprising reveals how quickly fear can turn into hatred. You learn that even peace must be enforced, that love from the people is not given freely, but rented by circumstance. You do not trust as you once did. You read more reports. You watch more closely. You keep your circle small. When Philip finally arrives, the wedding proceeds, but not with celebration, not with warmth. There are murmurs in every hall, resentment in every crowd. His presence, meant to strengthen your position, only deepens the unease. You see it in the eyes of your subjects. Their suspicion, their distance. They see him as an outsider, and you as the one who welcomed him in. The rebellion was crushed, but the scars it left behind are everywhere. They cling to your reign like a shadow. You begin to understand that there is no path back to the girl you once were. That girl, who prayed for guidance and whispered hope into the dark, is gone. You are something else now. Someone who knows what it feels like to be hated for the choices you made. Someone who carries the burden of survival, not with pride, but necessity. You are queen. You defended your crown. You did what you had to do. But the people remember the blood, and they do not forgive. You do not see her at first. You only hear about her. Lady Jane Grey, pale and thin and trembling behind the high walls of the tower. She had been queen for 9 days. A girl placed on the throne, not by right, but by those who feared what your rule might mean. She never asked for the crown, and from the moment she wore it, it began slipping from her grasp. By the time you arrive in London as the rightful monarch, she is already a prisoner, stripped of her titles, locked in cold stone chambers not far from where your own mother once wept. You are not cruel. You remember Jane as a quiet, clever child, more interested in books than balls, and her Latin was better than most men's. She had no soldiers, no voice in Parliament, no choice. It was her parents and her father-in-law, the Duke of Northumberland, who used her like a tool, lifting her high just to break her fall. Still, the people cried your name, not hers. They lined the streets for you, not her. They chose Mary. You did not have to spill blood to take your crown. But holding it is something else entirely. At first, you try to spare her. You visit your chapel. You kneel for guidance. You believe that mercy will show strength, that letting Jane live will make you greater than the men who plotted around her. You order that she be treated with care. You give her books. You send learned men to speak with her. You hope she might see the truth of your church, abandon the new faith, and find a place again, not in power, but in peace. She listens with respect, but she does not yield. Her God, she says, does not change with monarchs. She speaks gently, even kindly, but her words are steel. She will not return to Rome. She will not kneel to the Pope. She believes her soul is already set, and no crown, no dungeon, no priest can turn it. Even then, you do not rush. You leave her fate undecided. You send no execution orders. Perhaps you hope time will soften her, or the public will forget her name. But London is restless. Your council grows nervous. Whispers run through the streets of rebellion, of Protestant plots, of foreign spies. Every week, another pamphlet appears questioning your legitimacy, invoking Jane's brief reign as some kind of divine sign. It is not her fault, but she has become a symbol, and symbols are dangerous. Then, the storm breaks. Her father joins a new uprising. Armed men rise in your name, but twist it into something violent and Protestant. They claim to defend your right to rule while secretly hoping to restore Jane, or someone like her. When the plot fails and the traitors are caught, her name appears in the reports. Not for her actions, she did nothing, but for what she represents. She is no longer just a prisoner. She is now a risk, a possible future. The enemies of your reign still dream of placing on the throne. The pressure mounts. Some of your advisors urge execution at once. Others beg you to wait. You sit alone at night reading her letters, quiet and graceful, even in captivity. You try to imagine her walking to the scaffold, her thin frame in gray wool, her head bowed. You feel the weight of it settle into your chest. You are a queen now, but you are also a woman who has known exile, shame, and fear. You understand what it means to be used, to be judged, to be trapped by the choices of others. And still, the order is written. It is not vengeance. It is not even anger. It is necessity, or so you tell yourself. The sentence is delivered with regret, but it is delivered all the same. She is told she has 3 days. They offer her a final chance to convert, to save her soul, even if her life cannot be spared. She refuses gently, calmly. Her faith does not shake. She spends the night before her death writing to her father and reading the scriptures. She speaks of sin, of grace, of a world she is ready to leave behind. When the morning comes, London is cloaked in a quiet fog. From the window of your chambers, you see only smoke rising from nearby chimneys, hear only distant bells. At the tower, Jane walks out in silence, her steps steady despite the cold. She does not scream. She does not beg. She kneels, blindfolded, and fumbles only once before finding the block. Her voice is low, almost too quiet to hear. She says she dies a true Christian woman. She says she welcomes death, for it brings her closer to God. And then it is done. You do not cry, not in public, not in private, but something in you changes. You feel it quietly, like ink spilled on silk, slow and spreading. You have done what was required, but the weight is yours to carry. You tell yourself there was no choice. You remind yourself of the rebellion, of the risk, of what could have happened had she lived. You remind yourself that you are queen, and queens must act, not dream. Still, her image stays with you. Sometimes at night, when the corridors are empty and the candles flicker low, you think of her face, not in the tower, not on the scaffold, but in childhood, her hands stained with ink, her head bent over a book, her voice steady with recitation. You wonder what might have been had the world left her alone. Had men not tried to use her like a chess piece in their games of power? Her death marks you. Not in public, not with scar or scandal, but deep beneath the crown. She is the first soul your reign delivers to the axe. She will not be the last. And though the realm moves on, and the court grows louder, and the banners rise for your name, something in you remains still, quiet, watching. Because you know now, mercy is not always stronger than fear. And sometimes justice walks hand in hand with sorrow. You sit beneath the canopy of state, a crown of gold pressing gently against your scalp, its weight no longer foreign. The court is quiet, watching. You've called them here not to seek advice, but to deliver certainty. There are matters older than this throne, older even than your father's break with Rome, and they must now be corrected. The heresy laws will return, the same statutes that once kept faith from fraying, the ones that shielded souls from ruin, must be restored to their full force. You speak plainly, and the words do not tremble. No one interrupts. In the days that follow, scribes hurry to draft the legal reversals. You read each clause with care. These are not new inventions. They are restorations, statutes from your grandfather's reign, brought back from dormancy. England must no longer drift in the gray fog of spiritual confusion. Heresy, once banished by law, had crept back in under Edward's rule, sheltered by reformers who disdained the Mass and mocked the sacraments. That era is over. The realm must remember what it once knew. Heresy is not merely error, it is danger. And the soul of a nation cannot survive on error. The laws are clear. Denying the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, rejecting the authority of the Pope, scorning confession or the saints, these are not matters of private opinion. They are crimes, public ones. You read the punishments quietly, without ceremony. The condemned are to be given a chance to recant. If they do, they are spared execution. If they refuse, they are turned over to the secular arm. The civil authorities carry out the sentence. That is the structure. That is how it must be. Some around you flinch, not outwardly, but in small ways. A slower nod, a glance traded across the Privy Council table. You notice, but you press forward. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. When souls are endangered, when heresy is left unchecked, the infection spreads. Rebellion follows confusion. Look at the German states. Look at France. You have seen what happens when monarchs hesitate. You will not do the same. In the streets, the murmurs begin. Word travels fast that heresy is once again punishable by fire. You hear the whispers. Some say the Queen is bringing back the Inquisition. Others claim mass arrests are imminent. Many say nothing at all and simply return to church. You take note of this silence. It speaks more than fear. It speaks of habit returning. The first trials begin. You are not in the courtroom, but you read every transcript. These are not vague proceedings. The accused are asked plainly what they believe. Some falter. Some recant with trembling voices. Others stand firm. You do not take pleasure in this, but you do not shy away either. You remember what it was like to be told your faith was obsolete. You remember being forced to hide your prayers, to watch your mother die, in exile, faithful but alone. You remember being treated like a stubborn girl clinging to dead rituals. You are not a girl anymore. When the first execution is carried out, there is no fanfare. The condemned had refused to retract his words even after multiple chances. The sentence is carried out at Smithfield. You do not go. You pray instead. You pray for his soul and for the nation's peace. You do not expect people to rejoice, but you do expect them to understand. Faith is not a garment to be worn or discarded at whim. It is the root of order. Opposition follows, of course. Letters arrive from abroad. Warnings, pleas, even threats. But you respond to none of them personally. You are not beholden to foreign princes or Protestant allies. You are Queen of England, and the laws of England are yours to uphold. Your council manages the replies, careful and measured. Even so, ambassadors begin to murmur. Some reformers flee to the continent. You do not pursue them. You are not hunting individuals. You are restoring a foundation. At night, you sit beside the chapel candle, watching its flame flicker against stone. You think of the early church, of saints burned in Rome, of martyrs whose names you learned as a girl. You wonder if they felt the same ache you now carry, not regret, but the ache of duty. You know history will remember you in fragments. Some will call you cruel, others will call you devout, but only God knows your whole heart. The laws continue their work. Trials proceed, some ending in pardon, others not. You order that all convicted heretics be given the chance to return to the faith before their sentence is enforced. You refuse to allow haste. This is not vengeance, it is correction. Yet the tension deepens. Some members of court grow nervous. Your husband writes from abroad, suggesting discretion. You thank him, but remain unmoved. Spain may be devout, but England has wandered further. Her path back must be clearer. You visit churches, speaking with bishops, inspecting altars. You ensure the Latin Mass is fully restored, that clerics preach true doctrine again. Parish by parish, the kingdom begins to turn. The incense returns. The bells ring as they once did. The books once hidden in trunks are brought into the light. You see old women weeping at the resurrection of ritual. You see children learning the sign of the cross for the first time. You see order, piece by piece, returning. There are more names now, those who will not return. Some you recognize from Edward's court. Preachers, pamphleteers, bold men with harsh words and louder followers. You read their charges. You pause at the testimonies. You consider their past chances to recant. Some went to the stake convinced of their righteousness. Others hesitated too long. You do not celebrate, but you do not weep either. The laws have teeth. That is their purpose. You pray that one day they will not be needed, that the people of England will embrace truth without force, that the soil will become rich enough to grow faith freely. But you are not naive. You know that the path to peace is often paved with resistance, and sometimes the flame must burn for light to return. You sleep as calmly as you can, knowing the fire was not yours to command, only to permit. You are the sovereign, not the pyre. And in this reign, you have chosen the altar over approval. You wake to bells, not the soft chiming of chapel hours, but a slow, heavy toll that spreads through the city like fog. It reaches windows, doorways, cobbled streets. It wraps around chimneys and stables, clings to market stalls, and stirs the whispers already hanging in the morning air. You do not need to ask what it means. The burnings are to begin. You remember signing the orders, parchments that trembled only slightly in your hand, though not from doubt. Your pen moved steadily. the ink soaked through with purpose. Heresy is not an idea anymore. It has a face, a voice, a place in the crowd. You have seen what division breeds. You have lived through exile, watched your mother die discarded and dishonored, felt your name carved out of history with a cold blade of politics. You know what happens when faith is treated like fashion, when crowns shift with each new prayer book. So now, the country must remember what it means to believe in something sacred. You arrive before the crowd does. The site is already marked out with timber, blackened from rain the night before. A post stands in the center, surrounded by dry bundles of straw, as clean and prepared as if for a festival. Soldiers move with care, not urgency. The platform has been built by craftsmen, its lines precise, its edges shaped with unsettling neatness. It does not look cruel. It looks orderly. The condemned are brought forward one by one. They do not scream. Most walk, some stumble. Their faces are not defiant, at least not yet. They are pale, tense, alert. You study them closely. One is a preacher, thin from months in a cell. Another, a woman in a plain bonnet, barely more than a servant. Beside her, a man with ink-stained fingers. A printer, perhaps. Their words once passed hand to hand. Dangerous not because they were loud, but because they were easy to read. This is what must be corrected. Not with swords, but with fire. Not in secret, but before witnesses. You remember the first time you saw such a punishment. Not here, not in England, but long ago in Spain. You were a child, seated beside your mother in a cathedral square. There was no horror then, only ceremony. The crowd stood in silence as flames reached upward. Your mother did not flinch. She whispered prayers in Latin and told you that faith must be firm, not soft. That mercy without truth was weakness in disguise. That false belief spreads faster than plague if left unchecked. You believed her then. You believe her still. Now you watch the English crowd gather. Some are quiet, others murmur. A few children are lifted to their parents' shoulders. The spectacle is not new, but it is unfamiliar. There has been no fire like this for years. Not since your father broke from Rome and turned the country sideways. Not since your brother's advisors turned pulpits into stages. The people forgot that sacred law is more than custom. They forgot that salvation has rules. It is time to remind them. The sermon comes first. A bishop reads from Scripture. His voice is steady, the words chosen to match the moment. He speaks of wheat and tares, of branches cut from the vine. He does not name the condemned, but he does not need to. The meaning is clear. A kingdom divided in doctrine will not stand. Unity cannot survive with open defiance. The preacher's voice rises at the end, not with anger, but with finality. The sentence is read. The names are spoken. The crowd grows still. Then the torches are lit. You do not blink when the first flames touch the straw. Smoke curls upward, slow at first, then wild. The crackling grows louder. The woman cries out, not in fear, but in prayer. Her voice is sharp, filled with words you recognize but do not accept. Her God, her scripture, her stubborn claim to righteousness. The man beside her clenches his fists. The preacher closes his eyes. Heat rises. The wood hisses. Someone in the crowd begins to sob, but no one moves. Because this is not chaos. This is judgment. You remain still as the fire reaches its peak. You smell cloth, hair, flesh. The smoke is thick, but you do not turn away. You owe them this. You owe the kingdom this. It is not cruelty that brought you here. It is clarity. Without true faith, peace cannot last. Without discipline, belief becomes noise. And you have had enough of noise. When the flames die down, only ash remains. The guards douse the embers. The platform is swept clean. Tomorrow it will be used again, not as punishment alone, but as instruction. The lesson is simple. England is no longer a land of shifting creeds. It is no longer ruled by whim or pamphlet. It belongs once more to the church that does not change. You return to the palace with the smell of smoke still clinging to your sleeves. Your advisors walk beside you in silence. They do not question your resolve. They know where it comes from your mother's faith, from your exile, from the years of forced obedience and the long, bitter silence that shaped you. They do not know that you knelt in the dark the night before and wept, not for them, not for the heretics, for your own heart, torn between justice and ache. You do not enjoy fire, but you understand it. You understand what it takes to rebuild a kingdom that has forgotten its soul. And so, the fire will return, not as vengeance, but as memory. And memory, you know, is what keeps crowns from falling. You wake up to whispers, some behind walls, others behind fans, and many more behind smiles. At first, you try not to hear them, not the snide remarks disguised as courtesy, nor the polite concern that masks something sharper. But no matter how tightly you close the windows or how softly you tread, the murmurs find you. They speak of your body, your womb, your hopes. They speak as if your pain belongs to them. And in a way, it does. You are a queen, but your crown rests on the fragile promise of an heir. When you believe you are with child, the bells ring. The prayers begin. A nation kneels, desperate for a son. Your hand moves protectively to your stomach. The swell feels real. The aching, the sickness, the rhythms of change, every sign points to life. You whisper your thanks to God. You clutch your rosary tighter and picture your mother's smile, the one she wore before everything turned. This time, you believe, it will be different. This time, the line will be secured, and your reign will not feel borrowed. But the months pass. The cradle remains empty. Midwives come and go, with furrowed brows and gentle tones. Courtiers avoid your gaze, and you, still holding on, refuse to let go of the idea that maybe they're wrong, that the child is simply late, or quiet, or hidden by some miracle. Then, one morning, you wake and know. There is no movement, no warmth, just a silence deep inside your body. A stillness that confirms what no physician dares to say aloud. Your child was never there, or perhaps was there and left before drawing breath. You will never know. All that remains is the hollow ache of something taken without explanation. You do not weep in front of them, not even once. You cannot. They are already circling, already whispering about your age, your prayers, your mind, about how the queen carries phantoms. They say it as though your sorrow is something laughable, something absurd. And in that laughter, you feel the cold bite of mockery, sharper than any blade. Still, you carry on. You dress in crimson. You hold your chin high at court. You speak of God's will and divine timing. You remind them with every word that your soul is steady, that the foundation of your rule is not a womb, but a belief, a cause, a fire. But fire has a cost. You do not enjoy the executions. Despite what they assume, you do not draw pleasure from the flames. You do not watch them burn and smile. What you do is far more terrible. You pray. While the condemned kneel, while the faggots are piled high, while the torches are lit, you sit in your chapel and beg for their souls. You whisper that mercy is not always gentle, and that pain can be purifying. You believe truly that you are saving them. That belief is what shields you. It keeps your spine straight when foreign ambassadors raise their brows. It keeps your hands steady when signing warrants. You do not see ashes. You see redemption. A soul turned away from ruin. A heretic made whole in death. Others do not share your conviction. They call you cruel, bloody, madam. They shout your name in the streets, not in reverence, but in warning. Children are taught to fear you. Mothers turn their faces away when you pass. Once, you overhear a servant child murmur that you drink the blood of martyrs. He is punished, but the sting remains. And still, you pray. Your health begins to shift in quiet, persistent ways. You wake with aches in your joints. Your appetite fades. Some days, you can hardly rise from bed, yet you force yourself to appear before your council. You listen to arguments. You nod through sermons. You speak as though the weakness is not creeping steadily through your limbs, as though your reflection does not betray something thinner and more faded with each passing season. You write letters to Philip, your husband, your king. You tell him you are strong, that you will recover, that another child may still come. But you see his replies become shorter, his words colder, and his presence absent. He is gone more often than he is home, and even when near, he is not yours. You tell yourself it does not matter, that your union is sacred, that God knows your heart. But at night, alone in your chamber, you touch the empty space beside you and feel the weight of all you have lost. A child that never was. A people that do not love you. A body that no longer obeys. A husband drifting like smoke. You try to hold it together, to believe that suffering is holy, that pain refines the soul. You think often of your mother, exiled and dying far from the man she once loved. You remember how her faith never broke. You cling to that. But faith is not always enough to silence fear. One morning, you stare at your reflection and do not recognize the woman in the glass. Her skin is pale, her eyes sunken, her breath labored. You wonder how much more you can lose before nothing is left. You wonder whether the prayers have reached heaven or only echoed endlessly against stone. You do not share these thoughts aloud. You carry them like secrets stitched into your bodice. The court sees a queen in crimson, her crown secure, her rule firm. But beneath the silk, you are a woman unraveling, thread by thread. Even still, you do not stop. You continue the rituals, the mass, the fasts, the declarations. You believe there is still time, that salvation may come at the 11th hour, that perhaps history will one day see the mercy in your fire, the purpose in your pain. You have made yourself a vessel, for God, for England, for justice. But vessels, when emptied too many times, begin to crack, and no one sees the cracks until it is far too late. You never knew the ink would run deeper than the blood. that words written years after your reign would carry more weight than your own proclamations. That the book, bound in thick covers and passed from hand to hand, would become the version of you that endured, louder, colder, and far more permanent than truth. It did not begin while you ruled, but after. When England once again turned its back on the old faith and found comfort in the stories of suffering. Fox's Book of Martyrs was not written for balance. It was not a record. It was a weapon. And you, its target. John Fox, a man exiled during your reign for his beliefs, returned under your sister's rule with a mission. He collected accounts of Protestant martyrs, shaped them into a single story, and gave them purpose. His pages were filled with fire and pain and heroes who spoke their last words in holy defiance. But more than that, he gave them an enemy. He gave them you. Your name became the shadow at the edge of every chapter, the hand behind every flame, the queen who ruled not through law or lineage, but through terror. The book was not subtle. It gave faces to the dead. Bishops Latimer, Ridley, Cranmer, men once high in the church, men who challenged your authority and refused to return to Rome. Their executions were not hidden. They were carried out in public, as the law demanded. But Fox turned each one into a symbol. When Latimer and Ridley burned in Oxford, he described the flames as slow and choking, the smoke blinding, their bodies crumbling like ash from a sacred altar. He put words in their mouths that history could not confirm, and yet people believed them. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace, Latimer is said to have declared, as I trust, shall never be put out. Whether or not he ever said it mattered less than the fact that everyone remembered it. And Cranmer, your greatest insult. Once Archbishop, once a man of power and influence, he recanted to save his life and then withdrew his words, walking to the fire with a calm that Fox painted as saintly. He held out the hand that had signed his recantation and let it burn first, punishing it for its weakness. Fox recorded every moment, every supposed glance to heaven, every whisper of prayer, and turned it into legend, not fact, not evidence. Just a tale, told often enough to become real. You are not remembered in those pages as a woman, not as a ruler who fought for her mother's faith, who sought to restore what had been lost, who believed in salvation through unity. You are remembered only as Bloody Mary, the queen who killed, the queen who burned, the monster who walked among the faithful and watched them die. And still, the book does not stop with your reign. Fox's work grew with every edition. With Elizabeth on the throne, Protestant England needed a founding myth, one that cast its queen as the savior and its past as a nightmare. You became the nightmare. Your policies, rooted in law, in long-standing doctrines, were painted as personal vendettas. Your struggles, your loneliness, your failures in health and family were erased. In their place stood only fire. People read the book in churches. It was placed beside the Bible. Mothers taught their children to fear your name. Schoolmasters made your reign a cautionary tale. You were no longer human. You were a warning, a lesson in what happens when the wrong faith wins, when a woman rules, not with softness, but with conviction. And that conviction, the very thing that once gave you strength, became the thing they twisted. You believed your soul and your people's could only be saved through obedience to Rome. You saw it as a duty, a mercy. But Fox made it look like bloodlust. You did not order executions with glee. You did not walk among the fires smiling. But that is how they told it. And in time, people forgot the difference. It did not matter that executions happened before and after your reign, that Henry, your father, had spilled far more blood, that Elizabeth, your sister, would later send Catholics to the gallows. The world rarely remembers balance. It remembers stories, and Fox gave them a story that fit. His words lasted because they were simple. They painted the world in black and white, with martyrs dressed in light, and your shadow cast long and dark behind them. There were no footnotes, no complexities, only flames, and your name beside them. You wonder, sometimes, if it would have made a difference to speak more, to explain. But even that thought is bitter. You did speak. You issued edicts, gave speeches, wrote letters, but your words did not catch the wind the way Fox's did. They were not bound in thick books or read from pulpits. They did not promise suffering. They did not thrill. History, you realize, is not always written by the victors. Sometimes it is written by those who survive just long enough to publish. Fox published. You died. And in death, your silence made his voice louder. Yet there is still a quiet corner where truth lingers, where scholars read beyond the stories and remember that you were not just a figure of fire and fear. You were a daughter, a wife, a queen who tried, clumsily, desperately to bring her people back to the faith she believed would save them. You wept, you prayed, you bled. But those details do not burn as brightly as martyrs' fires. The pages turned against you long ago, and they kept turning. You live now not in memory, but in myth, and myths are harder to undo than facts. Even now, when someone speaks your name, it is not your words they quote, it is theirs. You are long gone when the name is born. You do not hear it. You are not there to explain, to defend, to correct. It does not come in a letter or a proclamation. It slips through the lips of those who never knew you. It lives in whispers, in tavern songs, in the stories told to frighten children. You are no longer Queen Mary. You are not remembered for your crown or your treaties or your faith. You are remembered only for the fires. The name comes after you die. Bloody Mary. That is what they call you now. A title made of ash and fear, passed from mouth to mouth, solidifying over time like wax cooling on a seal. It clings to you harder than any honor you ever earned in life. And it is not just cruel. It is deliberate. History begins to tilt against you the moment your sister rises. Elizabeth steps into your place wearing confidence like armor. She smiles where you scowled. She speaks carefully where you stood firm. She calls herself a daughter of peace, even as she inherits the throne forged in the same flames that consumed you. Under her rule, England does not forget you. It reshapes you. Your choices become warnings. Your faith becomes a flaw. Your legacy becomes something to bury beneath her golden age. Writers ink your story in red, exaggerating, twisting, simplifying. You are blamed for every wound the realm ever felt under your reign. The persecutions, the burnings, the failed harvests, the lost war, the empty cradle. They make no room for the years you spent unthanked, holding together a country split by rebellion, drought, and betrayal. They forget how you restored the coinage, reestablished law, and governed with tireless attention. Instead, they focus only on what scorched. You remember the decisions. You remember the pressure from advisors, the warnings from Rome, the push to restore unity through punishment. You do not forget the Protestants who plotted your death, nor the men who printed pamphlets declaring your crown false before it even rested on your head. You saw danger in heresy, not just to souls, but to the crown itself. Still, you never lit the flames with your own hand. But that detail is lost in the retelling. In time, truth is treated like noise. They don't mention your letters, the tender ones to your husband, to foreign cousins, to the children of those who once served you. They do not tell how often you wept in private, how alone you felt in your final months, how every night you waited for Philip to return, while your body betrayed you with false signs of life inside it. They speak nothing of the sorrow carved into you, the years spent holding the weight of your father's name, while being told you were never really his. Instead, they paint you in broad strokes, a monster in red, a fanatic, a queen who loved fire more than peace. And because it is easier to repeat than to understand, the name spreads. School children memorize it. Ballads borrow it. In time, it detaches from history entirely. It becomes a thing chanted in front of mirrors, a ghost with your face, haunting girls who have never read a page of your real story. Your sister, for all her brilliance, does not correct them. She lets the contrast stand. She is the light. You are the dark. Her reign is the dawn. Yours, the storm. And it works. England remembers her as Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, the patron of poets and heroes. You become a warning. What happens when a woman lets her religion lead? What happens when a queen cannot give birth? What happens when sorrow is mistaken for cruelty? But in truth, you were never what they said. You were not born cruel. You were made wary, shaped by exile, by betrayal, by silence. You learned not to trust flattery. You learned how quickly the world could twist. From your mother, you inherited pride and steadfastness. From your father, the iron will and the isolation of rule. You ruled not to harm, but to preserve. You believed unity came from shared worship, and did not know how else to bind a broken realm. And yes, people died during your rule. You know their names. You read the charges. You signed the orders. But others before you killed for power, and others after you killed for peace. What made yours unforgettable was not the number. It was the fear it stirred in those who wrote the histories. The discomfort of seeing a woman wield authority without apology. In the end, your story is not carved into stone, but written on fog. It changes with each generation. Some call you a tyrant, some call you a victim. A few try to find the middle path, to hold the contradiction honestly. But most do not try at all. They light candles to your sister and forget yours ever burned. Still, something of you remains. A presence, not the specter of children's games, but the truth that will not disappear, no matter how many books close their covers over it. You ruled as best you could in a world built to resist you. You held your faith while being pushed to deny it. You stood, even when the court around you wished you would fall. And though they changed your name, they could not erase your heart. You were Queen Mary, daughter of Catherine, granddaughter of Isabella, a woman born into promise, broken by betrayal. and remembered only for the flames lit in your name. But beneath the ash, the woman still waits, not bloody, not perfect, but real. And that is what they fear the most, the woman they never truly saw, the woman history still owes. Thanks for listening. If you're already asleep, great. We've successfully lulled you to sleep. And if you're still awake, well, that's impressive. If you genuinely enjoy these boring stories about history, feel free to subscribe to our channel whenever you're in the mood. Sleep well, and good night.